Yo, what's going on, family? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Listen, we are back. Man, I'm so glad to be back. I don't know about you all, but as always, I'm also glad that we made it to the end of another week. God brought us through to yet another Friday. If anybody else is grateful, go ahead and drop a line in the chat. Let me know that not only are you on live with me and that you're watching live, but let me know if you are grateful. What's up, Nidra? Man, we rocking and we rolling. I give y'all updates at another time, but I'm just excited and grateful that we are back. We are live. We are in person. And as always, I pray that you all had a blessed week. As a matter of fact, the fact that you are able to log on right now says that you are blessed. You know why? Because you made it. No matter what your week looked like, God saw fit to bring you all the way through. Yeah, maybe some things didn't go the way you planned it, but guess what? God is still good, and He still brought you through to the end of another week. Listen, do me a favor as y'all coming in. Not only drop a line in the chat, but go ahead and share this link out with some other people. Let some other people know that we are live. We are on the air as we get ready to jump into another episode of Friday Night Live with me, Pastor Frank. I have missed you all. Again, I share some details about stuff that's been going on, even being honest about how I felt in that process of things that were going on. But we'll talk about that in another episode at another time. Uh, but tonight, you all, I have been trying to get to this episode for the last 2 weeks. Uh, and so I'm excited on tonight, you all, as promised. We will be talking about dysfunctional distractions. Yeah. Y'all heard me. Dysfunctional distractions. And so yeah, do me a favor again as you all are coming in. Drop me a line in the chat. Well, you know what? As a matter of fact, I don't plug it enough. But if you have not, even if it's on a replay, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you go look up Frank Maurice Unfiltered. Hit that subscribe button, right? And then hit the little notification bell. So whenever I go live, even if we have glitches, technical difficulties, other kind of distractions, whatever may come, whatever may happen, that you can still be alerted and notified when we're live, when we're on in person. Because guess what? I may pop up just like I did on New Year's Day, right? Normally I come on Fridays, but God gave me something else to share, and so that was on New Year's Day. So you never know when God may inspire me to pop on or to share a video or some sort of encouragement or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, make sure y'all hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell as we get ready to jump into tonight's episode. As always, I'm my goal is not to keep us long, right? My goal is to give us some nuggets, some things that we can take with us into the weekend so that we can kind of let it marinate a little bit and maybe even spark some conversations with the right people, including with ourselves, right? Sometimes you got to talk to yourself. I feel like, being like old girl and stealing a piece of T.D. Jakes' sermon. Sometimes you gotta encourage yourself, and sometimes you gotta talk to yourself because if you don't think that you're gonna be broke, you're gonna be broke. Well, however he said it, but y'all get my point. Boy, I tell you, folks is out here wild and reckless, but either way it goes, God is still good, and so let's jump right in. Dysfunctional distractions. So here's the thing, you all. One of the reasons that as I was going through season two, remember I told you all at the very beginning that this season we were going to be intentional about being intentional about engaging in conversations that would help us to dream unfiltered. Right? Remember that's our goal is to be able to dream unfiltered, to get rid of all of the things that have filtered our dreams due to life experiences so that we can begin to experience better days more consistently. And so I had the idea in mind already, and I knew that one of the things as we began this journey to better days, one of the things that I was always aware of is distraction, right? But one of the things that I wanted to point out, which is what this episode is about, in particular, we're talking about dysfunctional distractions, right? And so I hear somebody saying, "Well, what's the difference between regular distractions and dysfunctional distractions?" I heard you, right? I heard you in my spirit. I heard you coming through the screen asking, "What's the difference?" As far as you're concerned, distraction is a distraction. But here's the thing: the difference between regular distractions, as we'll call it, and dysfunctional distractions is a regular distraction is simply, now it's not a good thing, but the main purpose of a distraction is to simply to steal your focus, right? To get us to be to not be focused on the things that we're supposed to be focused on, right? But the difference is for dysfunctional distractions, the goal of dysfunctional distractions is to trap us. Watch this, in patterns of dysfunction, right? And which it ends up causing us to be impaired. It could cause our vision to be impaired, right? It could cause our judgment to be impaired, right? So much so that we don't even have to work. Even if we tried to focus, if our vision or our judgment is impaired, it really won't make a difference, right? As an example, if you're driving a car, you're driving your car down the street, and you happen to see some kids fighting on the corner on the bus stop, right? And real quick, you kind of, even though you know where you're going and you're driving and you're in your lane, because something caught your attention real quick, you may lose a little bit of focus, right? And the car may begin to veer off into another lane, and then you got one or two things that happen. Either somebody gonna honk at you, and especially if you got one of the modern cars, it'll start beeping to let you know, hey, 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 you need to move, you need to focus, you need to adjust to get back to your regular lane, right? And that's fine. But here's the difference. If your vision is impaired, if your judgment is impaired, if you while you're driving your car, it doesn't matter how much you try to focus. I mean, and what I mean by that is, if your vision is impaired, let's say due to intoxication, right? That's why they say don't drink and drive. Why? Because it impairs the what we see. It impairs our ability to make sound judgment. But guess what? That's not the only dysfunctional distraction. Because guess what? I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been in a situation where maybe I was working too much, right? And I remember some years ago when I was working a job where I was working these crazy hours, and I would remember getting off at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and my body was used to working, like during the daytime, right? And so I had to work this job where I had to work these weird hours. So when I got off work one day, I remember I was so tired. I mean, I was dog tired. And so I remember the whole way driving home, it was a struggle for me to focus. Now I know where I'm going. I know what I'm trying to do, but it was a struggle for me to focus on staying in the correct lane because I was so drained. I was so tired. I could barely keep my eyes open, to the point I eventually ended up pulling over right in an area that I thought was safe or felt was safe, and took a little power nap, so to speak, because I had swerved not just one time, I had swerved enough times and almost hit a couple of cars, right? Or sideswiped a couple of cars. Why? Because my vision was impaired, right? And it's the same way with dysfunctional distractions. The goal of dysfunctional distractions is to impair our vision or our judgment, to the point that we are unable to focus on the things that we need to be focused on, right? And just as an example, what's up, Red? Just as an example, what would be some examples of dysfunctional distractions? And the reason that I felt that it was important, let me just back up real quick. The reason I felt it was important to even have this conversation, and I mean, just being honest, yeah, I know we're gonna keep it honest on here. One of the reasons I thought it was important is because as I've gotten older, I'm realizing that unfortunately, so many of us ha, ha, we learn, or let me say it a different way. For so many of us, dysfunction has been a way of doing things normal, right? It's hard to tell what's considered dysfunction and what's not if dysfunction is your normal. Hello, right? If your family raised you in dysfunction, then dysfunction to you is normal, meaning you will not recognize that that's an unhealthy way of acting. That is an unhealthy way of talking. That is an unhealthy way of living, right? None of us, we won't recognize it. But let me throw this out here because we mentioned it in another episode. That's again yet another reason why it's important to have the right circle. Because again, the right circle can help point out things that we cannot see. And especially when it comes to dysfunction, right? Because again, if dysfunction is your way of your normal way of living, you won't automatically be like, oh, there's something wrong with that. No, right? And what are some examples? I mean, again, when I was researching and looking up, like, what are some different examples? Because again, my brain be moving all over the place. Substance abuse, right? Substance abuse is a form of a dysfunctional pattern of behavior. What do I mean by that? People who grew up in families where misusing drugs or alcohol, watch this, was normal. Typically, those type of people begin exhibiting what will be called toxic behavior patterns, which eventually will lead to unhealthy relationships. And it don't matter the relationship, whether it's family, whether it's friends, or whether it's romantic partners. If that's how you grew up and that's your normal, you won't recognize that your behavior might be have some toxic tendencies because that's how you grew up. That's all you saw. To you, that's normal. That ain't the only thing. So, some of us may have. What if you're a person that grew up in a family where they didn't know how to communicate? Poor communication was the norm, right? Families that had difficulty in communicating, watch this, openly, honestly, usually they lead to patterns, watch this, of frequent misunderstandings and unresolved conflicts. Have you ever wondered why is it that some people just seem to not be able to communicate? They don't know how to express their feelings. Why? Because they wasn't raised in a way where they learn how to communicate properly. And what I mean properly, anytime you hear me saying the word properly, I'm speaking in terms of a healthy way of doing things, right? Poor communication is an example of a dysfunctional pattern. Here's another one: lack of intimacy. Now, notice when I say and the telltale sign for many of us, we didn't even know what intimacy was. We just assume when you hear the word intimacy that it automatically meant sex, but it don't. Intimacy is just simply a form of expression. But if you grew up in a family that didn't show many signs of, watch this, closeness, because that's all intimacy is. It's a form of closeness. It's showing a form or signs of closeness. But if you didn't grow up in a family where they demonstrated that in different types of relationships, oftentimes, watch this, it leads to those type of individuals. Those typically are the people who struggle with establishing, watch this, authentic relationships beyond superficial, right? I mean, most of their relationships are trying to connect with them, or them trying to connect with people is just hard and emotionless, right? Those are the people we would typically say they're emotionally unstable. And if we're being honest, There's a lot of people, not just these kids, there's a lot of these kids out here that are emotionally unstable. But why? Because their parents are emotionally unstable. And but regardless of which of the results or whatever the reason was, that makes it harder for you and me or anyone else to get close to one another because you haven't practiced. You haven't practiced what it means to get close with someone. So when someone wants to give you a hug, you like, why are you touching me? You invading my space. We all need hugs. A hug is a form of intimacy. Ain't got nothing to do with sex. It's just a closeness, a form or a sign of being close. Here's another one. For some of us, watch this, chronic conflicts and hostility is the norm. You grew up in a hostile family, a family of fighters. I remember I was working, I'm not going to say where, but I remember I was working someplace on the west side. That's how I'm going to say that. And one of the things that I realized when I was working at some place on the west side, that there was a lot of people who were all related, and I found out that pretty much everybody that was related, they was all some fighters, meaning and it was a known thing. Like, this is a family of fighters, right? You like that's just what they do. And then I remember somebody else said, well, pretty much when it comes to the west side, over time, through people getting married and divorced, blah blah blah, some of the names may change, but the majority of the people on the west side are all related, and it comes from two families. I don't remember what the family names were. That's not important. But the point is, I was told that pretty much all they do is fight. They don't play with the west side. I'm just repeating what they said. These, that I'm all I mean. Listen, I I saw. Let me see how can I say this. I heard a parent say, I'm getting ready to bring my child up to a school, so that they can fight. And if my child chooses not to, then I'm going to do something to them, because we don't let that type of stuff happen. So even if the kid wanted to handle it peacefully, handle it a certain kind of way, they were being made to fight, because that's what the family, meaning you better represent this family right, right? But chronic conflicts and hostility within families, if you grew up in that, guess what? That is your normal. So that means when you try to engage with certain people, or whether you're the one who grew up like that, or you trying to engage with someone who grew up that way, typically this eventually is going to lead to arguments and disputes that end up leaving individuals or groups of people angry and wounded. I'm all for handling your business when you got to, but I digress. Right? Here's another one. Another dysfunctional pattern: unrealistic expectations. Sometimes we grow up in a household with whether it's a family member, we just say adults, who have unrealistic expectations for us. And when I say us, for the kids growing up. People who grew up in families where you had to carry the burden of unrealistic expectations, usually is rooted in somebody else didn't get a chance to do what they thought they should have did. So now they're gonna try to live their dreams through you. But and usually it's from a parent or some kind of guardian or adult figure, role model, whatever. But here's the issue, even with that. Over time, eventually, that leads to issues with low self-esteem or perfectionism, right? Because some people, they end up being able to, they try so hard to live up to those unrealistic expectations, that they become that they realize they feel like I'm unable, I'm inadequate, and they end up having low self-esteem, feeling like, man, I let everybody down, I just can't do it. But then you have the other people who they spend their whole life shooting for perfection. Now, we should strive for excellence, but notice, excellence and perfection are not the same thing. They might be similar, but they're not the same thing. And so some people, they struggle with perfectionism. because someone placed the burden of unrealistic expectations, right? It's a few more. I'm just gonna mention them. I ain't gonna dive deep into them, but abuse or neglect, right? Some people dealt with abuse or neglect growing up, and it led to a pattern of abuse or neglect on their behalf. Unpredictability and fear. Some of us may have grew up in households where nothing. It seemed like nothing ever went right. The light was always off. It was always something. We always had to move. Whatever it may have been, which ended up leading to us having this. We had a fear that something, the bottom was always going to fall out. For some of us, even the how we express love, right? And what I mean by that, we may have learned a conditional form of love, meaning love is about equal exchange, right? Or love is based on you doing what I say, what I want, or what I think you should do, which is the complete opposite of the love that God describes in the Bible. God's love is unconditional. He loves you regardless. Now, does he expect us to live according to a certain code? Absolutely. But he still loves you regardless. Even when you fall short, he still loves you. But some of us grew in a household where if you failed to meet a certain bar, the love that they would show you would be taken away. That's dysfunction. Some of us, and I'm gonna say I fell in this is a category that was really heavy for me. Lack of boundaries, right? Some of us grew in households where there was no clear boundaries. And so as we grew up, we struggled to set healthy boundaries. All of these, either way it goes, I just want to name off a few examples of patterns or of dysfunctions. Because here's the thing, dysfunctional distractions again are meant to impair our vision, to impair our judgment, so that we're unable to function properly, even if we tried. Remember the example I just gave with the car? It's the same exact thing. When we are unable to focus, just like when you're driving that car, if your vision is impaired, if your judgment is impaired, not only do you run the risk of causing harm to yourself, you run the risk of causing harm to anybody that's in your vicinity. That's why it's illegal to drink and drive. That's that again, because you're unable to operate the vehicle properly when your vision or your judgment is impaired. And it's the same way with life. When our vision and our judgment is impaired, we run the risk of not only continuing to hurt ourselves, but just like with the car, we run the risk of hurting and harming anybody in our vicinity. So this weekend, you all, as we prepare to go into this weekend, this Martin Luther King weekend, I want us to keep a few things in mind. Take some time to reflect. Look back on your journey. Look and see where you are. Figure out if there are any dysfunctional patterns that maybe you've already got trapped in, or maybe you can see the setup and they're trying to distract you. Before I get up out of here, I want to tell you this quick story, because when I was uh, going over my notes and things a couple of weeks ago for this particular episode, I was reminded of a conversation that I had with a young lady sometime last year, and in the conversation, she shared with me that she was on this health journey, and she was trying to do better with a lot, with her eating habits. Along with, she got some things that she has coming up, and so part of her fast, she decided that she was going to abstain from drinking alcohol, right? And so and so she shared with, the people that she hung out with, her crew. She had shared with them, hey, I'm doing this fast, and it's cleansed, and so I won't be drinking. And so what she did was she would still hang out with them, and when they would go out, she would just not drink. And so after the allotted time had come and gone. Well, no, let me back up. I think what she ended up telling me was, while in the middle of the time that she was fasting, where they knew she was fasting, whether it was for 30, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it may have been. She, and on two separate occasions, she went out with a couple of, these friends, and one of the friends ended up buying rounds of drinks for all of them, right? And so she reminded them, hey, you bought a drink for me, but remember, I'm not drinking. And the person, was like, oh, you was for real? Like, and she said, yeah, I was for real. Like, I told you I was for real. I told you the reason why I was doing it. And I said, well, if you don't mind sharing, what was the reason? Not saying good, that it's not a good thing, but I am curious, what was your reason for making that decision to give up alcohol? And she stated, one of the things that she said, she tried it before, and she said, and she happens to like, watch this. She said, I like the sober version of myself better than the intoxicated version. She said, I'm able to think clearer, right? I'm able to see things better and make sounder decisions. And I said, I applaud you for that, right? And I said, and it's crazy, but if you notice, the people that's in your circle, they although you told them what you were trying to do, they didn't think you were real, and they were trying to encourage you to not stick to your what you said you were going to do and abstain from drinking, right? And they were trying to get, oh girl, you can still just, it's one drink, just go ahead, whatever. And so eventually, she ended up telling me, once the time period that she was doing her fast was up, she continued, right? She didn't go back to drinking. And as a matter of fact, I was talking to her a couple of weeks ago, and she mentioned to me that, I think she said, either the end of this month or next month, she said it'll be 1 year that she has not taken a drink. And again, she said, because I enjoy the person that I am when I'm not intoxicated. And I remember telling her back then, I said, because she was getting frustrated with when the second time happened and they bought some drinks for her. And she was saying, hey, I told y'all I'm not drinking. And I told her, I said, I said, I knew it was going to come to this, but I was going to wait until you brought it up. I said, but you do know that you're probably going to have to change your circle of friends, because the people who you had in your circle before, they may not match where you're trying to go. Hello. And I said, so what you have to start prepare yourself is to begin to find a new circle of friends, a new circle of influence. And she was like, ugh, how do I do that? I said, well, first you got to be open and you got to get in the right place, right? Meaning God will send you the right people, but you have to be in the right place. And when I say in the right place, you have to literally be in the right places, right? And you mentally, you have to be in the right place to be able to receive and recognize when God sends the right people to you. And the same thing applies to you and me. That again, we stated earlier, it's important for us to have the right circles around us, because the goal of having the right circle is to help us recognize the things that we cannot see within ourselves. But if we have a circle full of people that want us to stay where we are, right, or stay where they are, you might have to change your circle. So as we get ready to get out of here and you go into your weekend, take some time and reflect, because depending on where you are on your journey, you may gotta have to change some people in that circle. What's up, Ava? You very well may have to change your circle. Well, how do I recognize who my circle is gonna be? Two things. You gotta connect with God. I'm gonna leave y'all with two scriptures and we're gonna get up out of here. The Bible warns us in or in in I got to make sure I get this right. Proverbs 4:25. The Bible told us to keep our eyes straight ahead. And in that particular verse, what it was sharing and reminding us to make sure that we keep our eye. When they say keep your, keep our focus straight ahead, keep your eye focus on God, right? Don't worry about distractions. As long as we focus on Him, right? We will definitely see. Like the only thing you will see is whatever God's showing you. If all I'm looking at is this camera, only thing I'm gonna see is anything that's in the view of this camera. I won't see what's to my left or to my right. And so that scripture is reminding us, keep looking ahead. What are we doing when we looking ahead? We're keeping our focus on God. But then Colossians chapter 2, verse 4 told us or warns us to also make sure that we stay grounded in God, meaning make sure that we stay connected to God. How will you know whether or not God is sending someone to you? You won't know if you don't know His voice. You won't know His voice if you don't stay connected. Right? And in particular, in Colossians chapter 2, verse 4, he was warning them to stay so grounded in God because I want to make sure that you all are not easily manipulated through deception or delusion. Meaning, just like God has people He's going to send to you, guess what? The devil is going to send some people that look like they might be somebody you want to have in your circle, but they really just a big old distraction. Your circle matters. But you got to stay connected to God so that you can find and seek out the right circle. So, again, as we go into this weekend, I encourage each and every one of you all, take some time, reflect on your journey, make time to point out and look and see. Ask God, show me the dysfunction, if there's any dysfunctional patterns that I may have got connected with. So just like when we driving, so I can then make the necessary adjustments to get back in my right lane. Because at the end of the day, what's our goal? Our goal is to live and dream unfiltered. Our goal is to experience better and brighter days. But we got to be intentional and we got to stay connected. Well, listen, that's all I got for us on tonight. As always, I appreciate you all for tuning in. I pray that this blessed somebody. If it blessed you, share this link with somebody. Tell them to go. If even as we go off, it's gonna be up on the YouTube channel. That's why you gotta subscribe to Frank Maurice Unfiltered and make sure that you stay connected and up to date and all that other good stuff. But listen, I gotta get up out of here. But y'all know I like to end it with our quote, which is remember, dreams plant the seeds for the future. That's why dreaming is so important. They plant the seeds for the future, and your future is definitely bright. I got to get up out of here. Until next week. Peace out. Love y'all.